The invitation arrived without excitement. It wasn't addressed to the parents by name, just their department. A corporate dinner. Mandatory attendance? A formality tied to a partnership so large it made people whisper instead of speak. 540. $1 million had a way of shrinking everyone else in the room. They debated leaving their son at home. He was quiet, well-mannered, curious in the way children are when they don't yet know the rules of pretending. But childcare fell through, and the note at the bottom of the invitation said, "Families were welcome." The parents dressed him carefully, smoothing his shirt, reminding him to stay close, to speak softly, to be invisible. The restaurant didn't believe in invisibility. Crystal glasses lined the tables like trophies. Every laugh sounded rehearsed. Every handshake lasted half a second too long. People spoke about numbers the way others spoke about weather, casual, detached, as if those numbers didn't decide who slept peacefully and who didn't. The billionaire CEO arrived without announcement. She didn't need one. Conversations shifted automatically, bodies straightened, smiles sharpened. This was her world. Everyone else was temporary. The child sat between his parents, feet dangling, eyes wide. He watched servers move like clockwork. He leaned forward once, fascinated by the deep red liquid in a glass near his elbow. It happened in a blink, a small movement, a nervous shift. The glass tipped. Wine spilled across the white. Tablecloth and down, the sleeve of the CEO's tailored jacket. The room froze. Then laughter erupted. Not gentle laughter. Not nervous laughter. The kind that releases cruelty people keep bottled. A few executives clapped their hands to their mouths in mock shock. Someone muttered something about breeding. Another joked about teaching children their place. The parents stood immediately. Apologies spilled faster than the wine. The mother reached for napkins, hands shaking. The father pulled his son close, whispering reassurance even as his own face burned. The child didn't cry. He looked at the stain, then at the faces around him. Confused, embarrassed, learning something important far too early. No one told the others to stop laughing. No one except a junior operations manager standing near the wall, unnoticed until that moment. She didn't speak loudly. She didn't make a scene. She simply stepped forward, removed her own jacket, and gently draped it over the CEO's arm to stop the spreading stain. "I'm so sorry," she said. Not to the CEO, but to the child. Her voice was steady, human. A few people stared at her, surprised. This wasn't protocol. This wasn't her place. The CEO looked at the jacket, then at the young woman, then at the child. Her expression didn't change. She said nothing. She simply nodded once and allowed the staff to assist her away from the table. The laughter faded into uncomfortable silence. The parents prepared to leave. They didn't wait to be asked. Years of experience had taught them when they were no longer welcome. The father placed his hand on his son's shoulder. "It's okay," he whispered. "You didn't do anything wrong." No one contradicted him. As they walked out, whispers followed. Some amused, some annoyed, some relieved it wasn't them. The junior manager returned to her place by the wall. No one thanked her. No one acknowledged what she'd done. A senior executive leaned toward her and muttered that she'd overstepped. She said nothing. Across the room, the CEO paused before exiting. She looked back once, not at the stain, not at the table, but at the child's empty chair. The contract remained unsigned. No announcement was made, no anger expressed. The dinner continued, but something had shifted. The easy arrogance felt heavier now, forced. Later that night, while executives toasted future profits, the parents sat in their small apartment, their son asleep between them. The mother replayed the laughter in her mind. The father replayed the silence that followed. Neither knew that the real decision hadn't been made at the table. It had been made in the quiet moment when one person chose kindness while everyone else chose comfort, and somewhere far above their pay grade, someone had noticed. The contract review began without drama. No urgent emails, no raised voices. Just a quiet request from the CEO's office for internal reports, personnel feedback, and compliance records related to the partnership. Executives assumed it was routine. Deals of that size always came with paperwork. What they didn't realize was that the evaluation had nothing to do with performance metrics. It had to do with character. The CEO read everything herself. She didn't skim. She didn't delegate. She noticed patterns others ignored. Complaints quietly settled. Talented employees who left without explanation. Junior staff repeatedly reassigned after speaking up. A culture that delivered results, but crushed people who didn't fit its preferred shape. She requested security footage from the dinner, not for the accident, but for the reaction after it. She watched the laughter, the smirks, the way respect evaporated the moment power felt threatened by inconvenience. Then she rewound to the moment almost everyone missed, the young operations. Manager stepping forward, offering her jacket, speaking to the child as if he mattered. That moment lasted less than 10 seconds. It weighed more than $540 million. The CEO called in the executive team the next morning. No accusations, no lectures, just questions, simple ones, about leadership values, about how they define professionalism, about whether kindness was considered a liability or a strength. Answers came quickly. Too quickly, polished, rehearsed. She let them finish. Then she spoke. She said the contract was terminated effective immediately. Silence fell hard. Someone laughed nervously, assuming it was a negotiation tactic. Another executive began listing projected losses. She raised one hand and the room froze the way it had at the dinner. "This decision has nothing to do with the child," she said calmly. "Or the spill." Faces relaxed slightly. "It has everything to do with what followed." She explained that her company didn't partner with organizations that mistook power for permission to humiliate, that treated dignity as optional, that laughed at vulnerability while calling it culture. One executive protested, saying the behavior was harmless. Just jokes. No real damage done. The CEO looked directly at him. "Damage," she said, "is what you normalize." The meeting ended quickly after that. News of the contract cancellation spread fast. Stock prices reacted. Analysts speculated. Official statements cited misalignment of values. Internally, panic followed. People began revisiting old conversations, wondering which moments had been seen, which hadn't. The junior operations manager was called into HR that afternoon. She assumed the worst. She'd been warned before about stepping out of line. She prepared herself for consequences. Instead, she was escorted to the CEO's office. The CEO didn't thank her. She didn't praise her. She asked one question: "Why did you do it?" The young woman answered honestly. She said she saw a child being taught shame by strangers. She said she didn't think about policy. She said she'd hope someone would do the same if it were her. The CEO nodded once. That was enough. The manager wasn't promoted publicly. There was no announcement. No applause. She was simply moved into a role where her voice mattered. Where her instincts weren't liabilities but assets. Where kindness wasn't something to hide. Weeks later, the parents received a letter. No logos, no legal language. Just a brief note apologizing for what they'd experienced. It stated clearly that the decision to end the partnership was not caused by their son's accident, but by the behavior it revealed. At the bottom was a simple line: "Thank you for raising a child who reminded us who we should be." They never replied. They didn't need to. The child never knew the full story. He only remembered that someone had been kind when others laughed, that his parents hadn't shouted or begged, that dignity could be quiet and still be powerful. Inside the corporation that lost the contract, change came slowly. Some leaders left. Others adjusted. A few understood the lesson too late. The story was never told in press releases. It traveled instead in whispers, in internal warnings, in quiet reminders passed between employees. Power watches how you treat those who can't affect you. And sometimes, the smallest act of kindness decides the biggest outcomes.